Everyone has a story to tell. We connect and relate to one another when we share our stories. My name is Amelia Old, and I am your host of Voices of Inspiration. Join me as I share stories of friends, family, and strangers from my everyday life and travels. You will laugh, possibly cry, or walk away feeling connected more than ever to those around you and ready to be the change our world needs. Everyone has a story to tell. What's yours?
So thank you so much for joining me today and taking time out of your crazy busy schedule and just to tell me a little bit about your story in the culinary world. I really appreciate you being with me today.
I'm happy to be here. As usual, both restaurants are just full tilt. I've got great crews at both those, so they're handling things, which allows me to spend some time chatting with you.
Now, let's start with that because you told me when I met you, you have employees that have been with you a really long time, and I thought that was so impressive.
Yeah, I've been real fortunate. I don't know what all the circumstances were that brought it together, but I've been real lucky to hire very good people. Um, of course, I like to think I treat them well. Pay them as much as I can and make sure they get paid and give them a good working environment. And therefore, in this industry, which is known for really high turnover, I've had people working with me over 2 decades at Rivertown Bistro. My general manager has been with me roughly 18 years. My chef, roughly 20 years.
Wow.
He started off as a dishwasher and a prep cook, and just moved up through the ranks, And I'm fortunate to have solid people that were willing to learn, adapt, and grow with me as I've grown on my culinary journey.
I think that's really amazing. They must love what they do, and I think that's great to find people like that as well.
Yeah, there's a true passion for them. My general manager, Lee, is outstanding, service oriented. It helps that she's a good cook, a foodie. She knows wines. She's just stellar. She gets along really well with my wife. My wife has backed off of the day to day operations. It used to be she and I daily at Rivertown. When we opened 30 years ago, she did all the front of the house and the wine ordering, and she's still integral in all that. My wife, Cindy, and actually she's in the house on her computer. She's taking her SOM course, so she's still got the passion too. And then Terry, my chef, once again started off dishing, moved slowly up the ranks through garde manger, desserts, grill, saute. He can do everything in the kitchen that I can do, and he's younger. And so that's a plus because cooking is a young man's sport. I can still hang with the guys. I show them technique and new things all the time. But as far as running a line for 8 hours, day in and day out, it's kind of grueling. So I let the young guys kind of do that on the daily. But I'm still around. I'm usually at either of the restaurants anywhere from 10 to 12 hours a day.
What inspired you to pursue a career in the culinary world?
That's funny. I attended Winthrop University, which is right outside of Charlotte, purely to play soccer. It's a good school, but I didn't have a future. I wasn't thinking that way. I thought I was going to play soccer and I was pretty good. Maybe that would lead somewhere or maybe something in the soccer industry, a professional player, a coach. I really didn't know. But then reality started to set in like, what if I can't play? Or what if something happened to my legs or something? And my brother at the time had graduated culinary school up in Rhode Island. We're both from the Southeast. He was born in Tennessee. I was born in Charleston. But he sung the praises of cooking, and this is back before it was cool to be a cook. There were no cooking shows. I mean, there was like the Galloping Gourmet, which I started to get hooked on, and it was this this chef, I forget what country he was from, but Pasquale, I think he was Italian. But I would watch both of them and some other various shows. But he sung the praises of, just cooking and how it makes you feel and the camaraderie. And, if you surround yourself with good cooks and you're sending out good food, you're making people happy. The immediacy of a meal, course after course, in the span of a couple hours, people will come back into the kitchen oftentimes and say, "Hey, that was one of the best dishes I've ever had," or "We're celebrating our anniversary and we're here because the food's so good." Um, and once I started cooking in that frame of mind, um, it just takes over all your senses. It gives you a good purpose, pleasing other people. It's an honest trade. You'll always eat. I mean, there's just so many pluses about it. So um, I love it as much as I did the first day I started doing it, and it clicked with me. Um, and I like to spread that out to all of my employees. Just that, working in the kitchen or working serving tables isn't anything to be, I don't know. I think some people look at it as a stepping stone to get to a career. I think this is a career, and an important one, because I think not enough people gather around a dinner table and eat good, delicious, fresh food enough. Everyone's too frantic. Everyone, oh, let's just pick up carry out. Don't get me wrong. I
Mhm.
like carry out occasionally, but I just really enjoy the meal aspect.
I love that. Can you share a memorable experience from maybe your early days in the kitchen that sort of shaped your approach to cooking?
Um, I moved from Rock Hill, where Winthrop was, down to Mount Pleasant to live with my dad, and my goal was to work at Johnson and Wales. So I toured the school, and subsequently I had enough credits that would attribute to a associate's degree on an accelerated program, but I had to get some practical experience, which I'm very thankful for. I didn't just start culinary school; they wanted me in the field learning, sort of the school of hard knocks. And I worked at a few sort of dive restaurants. Um, and then I walked into this restaurant that was on Shem Creek, Coleman Boulevard, right beside Shem Creek. It was called Locklear's. And everyone in the kitchen got along really well. And there were some true Southern Geechee guys that had that thick Geechee accent,
Mm.
and their grandmothers had taught them how to cook. So these guys were my age to mid 20s and knew how to cook grits and okra and all this delicious stuff, but they could also saute snapper and make béarnaise. And I was so lucky to walk into this restaurant where we're making everything from scratch, and the mother sauces. And if you had an idea, the chef was very stubborn, but he would come around and accept that you did want to learn. We would always have to do things his way, but it was such an important thing for me to see why butter, when it's clarified, emulsifies into egg yolks. Because every day we're doing it, and I just always wanted to know why, and how much lemon juice and a little bit of salt and some tarragon reduction, and how it transforms this hollandaise into this delicious sauce. That's probably my first memory of me making something, and then we draped it over. Hell, it was on a fillet. We also did it on a spiced chicken breast with these roasted potatoes with this delicate buttery sauce, and it just. I remember we cooked it and we all ate it, and I was just thrilled that I had prepared this dish. That's probably my earliest memory of working in a professional kitchen and making something the first time. But then the repetitive aspect of making that dish as close as you can, so that if three people at a six top get it, each plate looks the same, tastes the same.
Mm.
I found the importance in that as well. So there are a lot of things that you absorb, especially as a younger person, when you come into a professional environment like that. Some people are like, ooh, 12 hours and it's hot
Hmm.
and I could cut myself and there's flames and no, this isn't for me. I've seen it day in and day out. But some people like myself go, bring it on. I love it. Let's get busy. Let's do 20 more people than we did last night. And last night we did 20 more than the previous night. It's that adrenaline rush.
Now, you've run several successful restaurants and you have a couple of successful restaurants now. What values or principles guide your approach to running a successful restaurant?
I think the nuts and bolts have to be from the ground up. You want a good atmosphere. You want good food served in a timely fashion. You want enough variety that a mixed group of people can all find something that they like. You have to get the food to the table. When I moved to Conway, I realized it's the county seat. Uh, so a lot of attorneys on schedules. We weren't on the coast with this 4 hour lunch that people could enjoy. They come in
Mm.
every now and then. You might sell a glass of wine, but people are wanting a sweet tea, their lunch, and about 15 minutes after being seated, and then they're on their way. And once you could do that, we could pack the house. So we learned to um, cook really good food really quickly and prepare ourselves and do as much as we could to make it easier on ourselves. Um, you certainly can't boil pasta to order or make risotto, so you learn to par
Mhm.
these things off. Um, Go ahead and have your vegetables cut, or maybe the longer cooking root vegetables pre-roasted. Doing all these touches that some people might consider sandbagging, but I consider it being smart. Um,
Mhm.
Lining your pantry with infused oils and spice blends and different garnishes, compound butters in your freezer. Um, all of a sudden, you can make these world class dishes, and people are like, wow, and you've just used your arsenal of stuff that you've prepared. Yeah, I think it's important a good environment, good food, and truth in menu. Um, I've eaten at
Mm.
plenty of places where you read something on the menu, and when it comes out, it's like, this is not grouper, or they say these are local whatever, and it doesn't appear to be that way. So I don't know why people would do that. Um, it's so much easier to say what you're going to do and do what you're going to say, I guess. But I'm a big fan of, I was changing the menu very frequently, but I learned that I kind of need to keep a core menu in place. And 2 or 3 times a year we change because now I don't really want root vegetables and that kind of stuff. And asparagus is popping up, and there's some hyper seasonal foods that I thoroughly enjoy, but I can't do fiddlehead ferns and ramps and these ingredients that I really enjoy getting um, all throughout the summer. So I get a bunch in and I'll make the ramp, the green part of the ramp into tubs and tubs of pesto and stick them in the freezer and then pickle the whites and, pickle morel mushrooms or whatever just to elongate the season for myself and to let others enjoy it that way.
Um, I think that that is really important to keep the menu somewhat the same because it can be frustrating as someone dining in a restaurant and you're going there for a specific dish and then the menu has been changed and people like what they like, right? And so they're coming to you oftentimes because there's something specific on that menu that they just have a craving for or that they really want. So I do think that that is important, as a diner, that seeing a restaurant kind of stick to that core group of dishes.
Well, and yeah, for sure. And I purposely rotate dishes from 30 years ago. And
Mm.
it's funny for me to do that. And I think to myself, how is it that, I wrote a menu 30 years ago? We opened June in 1994, and I had some pretty fun things on the menu, and I'll describe a few of them. But I had just learned about tapenade, and I loved to smear it on a meaty fish and roast it in the oven with panko breadcrumbs mixed with pine nuts as the crust and simply serve that over caramelized onions. It was simple, it was delicious, it was packed full of flavor, and it was something that I could do because I was basically the only cook, and I could do that well, and I could serve that, and people really, really liked it. And at the same time, on the same menu, I had a lightly blackened dolphin, and I still blacken stuff to this day. Um, One of the previous chefs that I worked with got Paul Prudhomme's cookbook, and we just devoured that book. Every recipe, how to make roux, gumbos, etouffees, you name it. I got engrossed in that too, and that was early mid '80s, and that's when I started to get intrigued in that. Probably about '87, '88. Um, I could be wrong, but I think so. But anyway, I would blacken this dolphin and I put it on a jalapeno grit cake. So there was a restaurant in Charleston that had just opened, and I want to say they did the grit cake, or maybe I saw it. I forget where I saw it. Um, but I thought I'll make it my own, and I'll put diced up pickled jalapenos in it to add to that heat. And I'm going to blacken it, and then I'm going to cool it all with a blue crab cream poured over the top. And then I'll just do some seasonal vegetables or maybe zucchini and squash on the side. Um, so those are two dishes. I could flat top, I could drop the grit cake. I would pre-make the sauce, the crab cream, and keep it up high. I could roast the fish in the oven. So I had these two dishes, and then I had a steak. I had a couple of pastas. And I just kind of learned to do these things that were fresh and good and very flavorful, but not locked in. This was kind of low country. This is kind of Mediterranean. And I was pulling from all these different areas and foods that I had eaten at and liked. And I took great joy in that. So I don't like to be pigeonholed. I call my restaurant Rivertown Bistro, not that it's a brasserie or a French bistro, even though I love brasseries and bistros. And that's one of my go-tos when I eat out of town. But, I do want mussels with good crusty bread or French fries. And I have French onion soup on my menu. But we also have references to Jamaica. We have Jamaican jerk sauce on my menu. I've got risotto. I've got through and through low country. Um, and I think it's important to use local stuff. I'm so tired of the moniker farm to table. Because if you're not doing that, what exactly are you doing? But I think people say that way too much. It's just like, of course, you should use local because it's local, and why wouldn't you?
Mhm.
But that also doesn't stop me from getting salmon flown in because people really like salmon, and I can't get salmon here. And
Mm.
I don't know. I just think submerging yourself into doing things, or at least try to do things the right way. Your hiring practices, your the way you prep, the way you treat your ingredients, all the way down to recycling. I think it's important to try your best.
Mhm.
Sometimes you don't make it all the way. Sometimes it's maybe at the end of the day, I'm like, man, I feel like I only did 85%. Well, that's okay sometimes. You just pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and the next day you attempt it again. Um, One of my favorite cookbook authors, Charlie Trotter, he recently passed. I was lucky enough to eat at his restaurant, but he had wonderful quotes through his through his cookbooks, and one of them was from another chef. But it basically said, and I'll just paraphrase that, um, unlike most other occupations, the chef starts new every single day. I mean, you're going into hopefully a clean stove, empty
Mhm.
pans, and here comes your product. And you break down the fish and you chop your vegetables and you do that. You get a clean slate every day. And you can say, okay, gosh, this is a lot of work. Or you can say, I'm going to make this stuff delicious and I'm going to have fun prepping it. And we're going to have a good night's service. And before we know it, we're going to be mopping our stations down. And then we'll have a glass of wine and toast the night. And then we're going to do it all over again tomorrow.
I love that. What has been, you think, one of the biggest challenges that you faced through your journey, and how did you overcome it?
Um, Even in a really good economy, with low food prices and abundant labor, what else? When everything's like hitting on all cylinders, a restaurant is very difficult to run profitably. So my wife and I have always tried to put everything under the magnifying glass, holding all of our purveyors to the task of, yes, I want the best. I will pay top dollar for the best. But I don't want you to then think I want to pay top dollar for flour and salt and stuff that you can gouge me in other areas. So I think it's really important to build relationships not only with my workers, and we're a family there, but my purveyors. When they come in and they bring people in, reps, I want to buy their lunch. I'm not looking for freebies for them. I want to see their products, and I want the purveyor and my local guy to know that they can come eat with me, and I like them. I don't look at them as like, I've been in situations where I've seen other restaurant owners and chefs treat their salesmen and yell at them like they're underlings, like, my fish didn't come in and it's your fault. You're going to have to do this. I mean, we're all trying to do the right thing. So I think, keeping things in perspective, putting everything under the magnifying glass, and holding yourself and everyone else to task is important. And to let everybody know, hey, I'm sure people look at me and go, man, that guy has 2 restaurants and, he can, probably makes a lot of money. The profit margin is so small in what we do. I do take advantage of eating really, really good food and drinking delicious wines and going on trips to food destinations, wine destinations where the people that I purchase from take care of us and let us stay for free and give us private tours. Those aspects are invaluable to me. That's where I'm wealthy. Monetarily, I think Mondavi said, and I'll liken it to a restaurant, but he said, you want to know how to make a small fortune in the wine industry? Start with a large fortune. And that's probably my favorite quote, because at the end of it all, you have a small fortune, but look what fun you've had, and you've sold your stuff, and you've made other people happy. Of course, I want to save money, and I have a daughter that's the light of my life, and she's in college now, so putting her through school. And I grew up not as fortunate as a lot of my contemporaries. My family didn't make a lot of money, so I appreciated the smaller things in life, and the fact that we would go out to dinner maybe every other month. My dad would save his money, and we would go out to a nice place to get a steak, and it made me learn the value of it. My parents never gave me a car or anything, so I did decide at a young age that I would work my butt off to have some of the nicer things in life and do good enough to buy my daughter a car and pay her way through school, and not spoil her to the extent where she expects it, but teach her the value of life and what to do, and take nothing for granted.
I can relate to you in a lot of ways with that. I also didn't grow up, wealthy. I didn't, my family didn't have a lot, but one thing that is important to me, like yourself, are the experiences that we have along the way, and growing from those and experiencing those with our loved ones, and even with our children. 2 are who adults now, and we still have 1 at home. One of our favorite things to do at the holidays is give them a gift of an experience, whether that's a trip with us, one-on-one time, concert tickets, an activity they really wanted to do, but an experience where that they can create these memories, and it's not something that they're just going to toss to the side in 6 months. So I think that those things are really incredible and important.
I think that's just fantastic. That gave me goosebumps. I think that's so important. Like you say, around the holidays, what is the reason for the season? We always pause for the true reason, but then of course we want to rip into some fun gifts. But then we do the same thing too. We want to plan a trip, and sometimes we'll even skip the whole tradition. I will say we kind of miss the traditions when we do it, but we do. We'll book a trip to New York over the Christmas holiday and get a nice hotel room and bring a little Charlie Brown tree and candles that smell like pine. So we have that feeling like we're at home, but then we're walking the city and it's snowing and we're eating at Jean Georges or Per Se or a hot dog from the street cart. And man, talk about some fun memories. So yeah, we're very similar in those respects. I think that's awesome.
Absolutely. So, what advice would you give to aspiring chefs who want to build a career in the culinary industry?
Um, Read, collect cookbooks. When you get out of culinary school, you are not a chef. Work under several good chefs, but spend time. Don't work for 2 months and think you've learned somebody's technique, work ethic. Work for somebody for a year, work for another place for a year or two, and then start developing your situation, what you think you want to do. I just think uh, I'm a mentor. I sit on the culinary board for the culinary school, and I'm very good friends with all of the chefs out there. And when they get an up and comer that's really good, we're one of the places that they'll send. And that's my first thing to tell them is to just, go in to my restaurant and be clean, be organized, listen, and then slowly develop. I think that's the biggest thing is to just take it all in, take every aspect in, watch how the service is, watch how people move. When you're walking behind somebody and you say behind you, and all the little, there's so many little jargon, whatever you want to call it, in the restaurant business, in the kitchen. Um, that's its whole language in itself. Um, so if you mesh maybe um, a stage or a cooking experience or some cooking with some good chefs, and you get some cookbooks and you look at them and you read them and you look at them. I get them more for the pictures. I collect cookbooks. I have hundreds. um, I don't get them to like get somebody's recipe so that I can make their scone or something, even though maybe I would, but I get it because I want to see the chef's mentality. I want to read who the person was that wrote the foreword, and I want to know that the grandma did this way and then I switched it up to make it this way. There's always a good story in them. So young chefs should do that and look at your family and how your family ate. Like I said, I grew up with fish sticks and jarred applesauce, and I had never had fresh fish. I didn't know. I thought barbecue came in a can. I'm not kidding you.
Mm-hmm.
Castleberry's barbecue. I'll eat it to this day. Chef Boyardee pizza. That's what I thought pizza was. Um, I've got a
We have
box in the
salmon
house
patties
because
made out of canned salmon.
exactly, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And if I make the Chef Boyardee pizza with that stinky Pecorino Romano canned
Mm-hmm.
cheese that I love, and it's baking in the oven, I go all the way back to eighth grade watching $6 Million Man and Logan's Run, and I'm in the den, and my mom and dad are in the kitchen, and my brother's on the couch. I'm laying on the floor, and that's the smell. That's like aromatherapy to me.
Mm-hmm.
Just things like that, like jarred ragu sauce. Do I serve that at my restaurants? No, but do I eat that
Right.
at home? Often. It's just a childhood thing. I think it's just good to. I look at how each of my grandparents treated mealtime. My dad's mom, very, very frugal, grew up through the Depression, didn't have a lot of money. And then my dad's dad was a fireman, and ironically got in a wreck with another fire truck and passed away when my dad was like 14. And subsequently, his mom remarried about 10 years later to a guy that did have money, but that didn't stop them from being frugal. They would tear a Bounty paper towel in half, and that would be our dinner napkin. And when we would eat over there, she didn't necessarily cook. She would get the leftover stovetop stuffing from 2 nights ago and maybe one piece of personal pan pizza from 5 or 6 days ago. And she would have the cooler clean out, is what we would call it, on our way over there to eat. And we loved it. My mom's parents had a garden, and they didn't have a whole lot of money, but we would eat fresh Silver Queen corn and pick watermelon. And we would always eat chicken, never any fish. But still, I take away from those instances, and I cherish them. I like to do those kind of things for my wife, of course, my daughter, and my daughter's friends. We've even started a tradition. Sophia has 9 suite mates, and when I met them on moving in day, I said, I think it'd be cool for me to cook for you girls. Of course, I want you to come to the restaurants, but I would love to open up my home. We have a big dining table, and I would like to cook for y'all and give you a home cooked meal. And they said, can you do it tonight? And I did. And subsequently, we do it once a month. They come over. If it's nice, they swim in the pool. If it's cold, we light a fire. And I've cooked anything that there's favorite dishes from their childhood, I'll recreate, whether it's, they call it pasta with gravy. All these girls are from New England, like New Hampshire, Boston. None of them are from around here. So that's been cool too, to hear where they come from. Lobster bakes and all this other stuff. So I've learned a little bit from them. So it's like full circle.
To go back to, you were talking about some of the meals that make you think of home and bring back these memories. It's funny how that works. I mean, even for me, the same. There are times where, we grew up, a bowl of pinto beans would have been dinner. Or, my mother would have these little dinner rolls and put a slice of ham in it. And that was dinner, and so now sometimes I do find comfort in Great Northern beans or pinto beans and okra and things like that. I'm definitely very Southern, but one of the treats, and my kids always thought this was funny because, you couldn't just buy like whatever you wanted at the grocery store. And something as simple as a bag of Ruffles potato chips and the French onion dip was only, you had that for birthdays, and that was it. And so I would still, when my kids were even little, I would still buy that. And I'm, of course I can buy it, when I want now, but I'm like, this is a treat. This was like a special thing. And even now I find myself, when I want like that treat or that snack, that's one of my go-tos, which is so funny, looking back on that. And the same with my kids. They come home to visit. Well, what would you like me to make from when you were younger? Or they just come home with their request. They're ready. They want this Monday, this Tuesday, this Wednesday.
Right.
Yeah. So how has Conway influenced your culinary style and the atmosphere of your restaurants?
That's a good question. I came here from Charleston when Charleston was just going through its sort of renaissance. I spoke to you about a restaurant that opened. It was Magnolia's, Donald Barrickman. He ended up being not like a best friend, but I knew him. Some of his line cooks I became friends with just because they would like date a server of the kitchen that I was working at. But he opened up, and then Peninsula Grill. So now it's like blown up. It's crazy. So when I came up here, I had a backbone of being a good cook. I knew I was a good cook. I wanted to be a good chef. Oh, back to that, and this is parallel for the questions about being a chef. To me, if you're going to be a chef or call yourself a chef, um, you better know how to answer any question in your kitchen. Oh, this vinaigrette has shattered. Why? How do I re-emulsify it? All right, this snapper, or is this yellowtail or triple tail or golden tile? What is this fish? Here's 4 fish in the walk-in. You should be able to know where the pin bones are. You should be able to break down whatever it is on your menu, whatever it is you're serving. Thomas Keller has the Bible of cookbooks, a lot of chefs think. Um, and he goes through the importance of trusting a chicken. He went to one of his first restaurant jobs thinking he was a chef, and the French chef said, "Here, trust these chickens." And he flipped it over and he looked at it and he took some twine and he tied the legs together. He said that chef got so mad at him he threw a knife at him. I don't know if he's like over embellishing, but it was a life lesson for him that you don't go around boasting I'm a chef if you're not a chef. You should be able to saute, grill, cook to temperature, just every aspect of it. That's very important. And then back to your question about Conway, I've really grown since I've lived here. I guess the Conway aspect would be getting to know. I was very fortunate that my landlord, when I first moved to town, I assumed the lease of an existing restaurant. And the landlord was George Jenkins, one of my best customers, and ended up being a dear friend. But he was a gardener. His family had a lot of property, to the point that like he owned a lot of property on 501, the main drag in Conway, and he sold that property to Chick-fil-A and a bunch of these big companies. So George Jenkins, the farmer, really had a lot of money, and you wouldn't really know it. He dressed nicely and drove a pickup truck, ate at my restaurant a whole lot with his wife and family. But as far as a farmer, I remember one of the first days after I was in there kind of renovating and doing stuff, he came to the back door with banana peppers and asparagus. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what is all this? Some tomatoes and some squash. He said, out 6 Mile is my farm. And I'd like to supply you stuff when it's in season. And I'm like, oh my God. He said, I brought you this just to say, welcome. I want you to do your best, but I want you to know that you can come out there. And, I had seen a little bit of gardening growing up at my grandfather's, but I didn't know it. Well, I would spend hours out there with George learning and picking and bringing stuff back. Um, that's probably where I've learned the most. And then subsequently, um, other farmers caught wind that I might like local stuff. Beekeepers started bringing me honey. People that had chickens were bringing me eggs. And now we have a farmer's market on Saturday mornings. And I go through there, and it's like there's probably 10 of them that I'm close, 10 little booths. And we just talk, how's your kids? How's Sophia? Da-da-da. Okay, I'll take, a loaf of bread. And then the next one, oh, these strawberries are beautiful. I kept building those relationships, and the fishmongers over at the beach. I got some really good guys that know, if triggerfish hits the dock, I'll buy every piece that they have. It's one of my favorite fish. I used to love it because I thought it was better than grouper and 1/8 of the price. Now everything's $24 a pound, so you just got to get it. But soft shell crabs, those guys just know that I'll pay whatever the fair price is, and and reading books and then traveling and seeing other really good restaurants and how they plate food, and almost the vibe of the restaurant is what I'm looking for when I travel and eat out. And my daughter, she's 19. She loves Chick-fil-A nuggets and waffle fries, but she also likes a tasting menu at a Michelin-starred restaurant. And so we thrive on that. And
can you talk about some hidden gems or local favorites in Conway or the surrounding area that you would recommend visitors explore?
Oh, completely. So at the beach, there wasn't one here, but there was La Pablanitas. killer Mexican. And there's one here in Conway, about 8 blocks from the bistro, called Guanajuato, and everything is just 100% authentic, delicious. The salsa verdes, the salsas, their queso fresca, cotija. I buy a lot of that stuff because my one restaurant is a barbecue place and I do tacos. But for some reason, their stuff tastes a little better to me. I don't know. Uh, so those are two really, really good ones. My fishmonger, right now I'm using Mr. Fish. And he had a restaurant beside his cut shop. He subsequently sold that, but in his cut shop, they have everything available, right? Snapper, barramundi, they have a lobster tank, scallops, anything you want, and I get a lot of my stuff from him. But you can also go in there and they have a menu. You can get a fish sandwich or whatever. Or you can just go, hey, I want those 4 of those U10 scallops blackened. I'm going to start with that. And they'll inadvertently be like, we just made this killer crab bisque. I'm like, all right, we'll get a cup of that. We'll eat that, and then we'll have a glass of wine, and then I'll go, okay, we want a steamed lobster and whatever. And we'll order a bottle of wine, and it'll come out in an oyster bucket with ice. An oyster bucket is a plastic bucket that we get select oysters in to fry. Anyway, they reuse them, and the first time I ate there, it's been years, but I just love that. And it's inexpensive, and I tell everyone I know to go there. Don't go to the places like down in Murrells Inlet where it's a 2-hour wait and you're eating fish from China. Go to Mr. Fish and it's right there raw in front of you, and eat that delicious stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of my go-tos. And then I have really good culinary friends that have restaurants that I think my restaurant is as good as theirs, or maybe theirs is as good as mine. I don't know how to say that. We all strive creatively to do our best. So there's Tyler at Fire and Smoke. It's sort of this high-end gastro pub. I don't even know what he calls himself, but he and I have a big affinity for tequilas, and we have a lot of fun together behind the scenes, cooking together after dinner. If I have a wine dinner, he's first on the list. If he has a wine dinner, whether it's, Raymond or Lytton Springs, Ridge, or whatever, I'm the first at his. So Fire and Smoke. And then down south in Pawleys, which is further than Murrells Inlet from Conway, Pawleys is a well-heeled sort of resort community with some stellar restaurants. My two favorites are probably Chive Blossom. PK is a great friend of mine. He's the chef and owner, and he was actually the chef of Frank's, which is another good one down there when I moved to town. He and I are about the same age, very similar cooking styles. So that's a delight down in the Pawleys area. And then Adam Kirby is another great buddy of mine. He has Bistro 217 and Rustic Table. Rustic Table's one of my daughter's favorites. We actually had a daddy-daughter date last week and went down there shopping and knocking around and had some good grub.
There's a lot of options in the area, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I mean, well, I think somebody said like 2,000 restaurants now.
Can you talk about your experience on ChefSwap?
Yeah. Amanda Freytag was the host. They came to the area and headhunted 10 or 16 restaurants, and I ended up lucky enough to be one of them. I was a little confused because they called to say that they were interested for me for a cooking show, and I was elated. The Food Network had called me years ago. So somebody had eaten with me or had heard about me, and we had had some really good press in Sandlapper magazine and the local newspaper. But I couldn't leave. I couldn't go. It was one of those things, can you come compete in something? And I'm like, there's no way. So anyway, this sounded intriguing. So we started talking. I'm like, yeah, I'm very interested. I'll do it. But then she said, yeah, we want you to represent Bonfire. That's my smokehouse. It's a smoking taqueria. I'm very proud of it. I made up all the recipes. I taught my smoke house dude and my pit master how to smoke. I think our food's wonderful. But I thought, I've been for 30 years cultivating Rivertown Bistro into what I think is a stellar restaurant. It's not crazy off the chain food, even though sometimes I am, but it's solid food. And I am creative. Like when I do a wine dinner, it's off the charts. But she said, no, it's Bonfire. And I'm like, well, okay, I'll do Bonfire. So I went up against another restaurant, Tidal Creek Brew Pub, that I actually buy beer from, and really nice people. And we had the competition was you show up with a secret ingredient and you don't know what you're going to cook. So I'm representing Bonfire, and I smoke everything. But also for 30 years, I've been smoking tomatoes and pureeing them and putting them into a ranch dressing for a salad. So I thought, I'm going to bring smoked tomatoes. Now, if I get a dessert, that'll be interesting, but I'll be able to do something. But anything savory, adding smoked tomato, whether it's a sauce, a beurre blanc, into like a Chiron, like a hollandaise with tomato or ranch, I figured I could do something. Well, you show up at his kitchen, you've never been in there. You got about 20 minutes to map out the kitchen, look at the plates, you get a sous chef in there, and you're asking, what are the hot spots of the grill? Where's your coldest fridge? Where's the pantry? And then Amanda comes in and she's like, all right, your competition is burger. And you're like, okay. And you have an hour, and you're immediately, the walls are closing in. It's 20 degrees hotter than it was when you walked in there, or at least it was for me. I'm sweating, and I'm like, burger. Okay. So I'm opening drawers and I'm looking. I look at the menu, and they've got shrimp, and they've got scallops, and they've got pork belly. They've got ground beef. I'm going to do a surf and turf burger. I'll make like a chunky seafood, almost like mousse, shrimp and scallops. And I'll use the pork belly and burger, and I ground it. And I'll use this ranch. And then I'll make with the smoked tomatoes. And I'm going to put smoked tomato into a hot sauce as a sidecar. And they had quinoa and fruit. I'm like, I'll do my surf and turf burger, but instead of doing fries, I'll do a quinoa and fruit salad. I'll put the smoked tomato in it. So I'm rolling, but I'm a hot mess. I want to do quick pickle. So I'm pickling onions with some of the smoked tomato liquid in it. And I got pans going, food processors going. I'm sweating. And Amanda comes back and she's like, okay, chef, you're 15 minutes in. And I can see the look on her face. She's just like, oh, maybe we picked the wrong guy, is what I think she was feeling. And she's like, can you use it? Is there anything else you need? I'm like, I could really use a shot of tequila. And we laughed, and she walked out of the kitchen. Well, in the next 10 minutes or so, I got my shit together. My onions were done. I done my salad. I made both of my patties. I'm picking my bread. And she comes in and she's like, oh, you've got some stuff. So she tried an onion and she tried the ranch, and she's like, this is good. I'll be right back. And she went and she got me a shot of tequila. It wasn't chilled, but it was a shot. So I ripped that, and that really helped me. And it got my creative juices flowing a little more because I was done, completely done. I had like 5 minutes left, and I'm thinking, what else can I do? I've got this surf and turf burger. I'm using some of their product, but I made it my own in all these different ways. I've made a pickle. I made this sauce. What else can I do? I've been here an hour. I'm like, this is a brew pub. And I don't drink them, but I've seen these Mexican guys pour tomato juice in a beer. I'm going to take the rest of my smoked tomato puree and put it into one of their lagers. So I did that, and I was like, 1 minute left, and I finished. And you don't know how you're going to do, and nobody tells you. They eat it, and then they tell you to leave. And it's, he does in my kitchen. So I'm like asking it was one of my sous chefs, Will, helped him. He's like, yeah, the guy did pretty good. His stuff was pretty good, Darren. I ain't going to lie. And I'm like, man, It's competition burger. So we go to the award ceremony, and it's ChefSwap at the beach. We're at the culinary school, and the table in between us is a surfboard, and we're holding the surfboard. You know, it's about a 6 foot long board, and he's at one end, I'm at the other, and there's Amanda and the judges with her, and we don't know who's going to win. And I'm on national TV, and I'm gripping that surfboard so hard I thought I was going to like break the foam with my thumbs. And she gave the accolades to me first, and then she was talking to him how I felt like even better than she was talking to me. I'm like, this dude is going to beat me. And then she looked back at me and she's like, but there can only be one winner. And she, as she's saying that, she's looking at me. And then she looks at him, and then she picks up the knife and she says, Darren Smith. And I'm like, I about fainted. I about collapsed. I mean, you know, big deal. If I would have lost, you know, whatever, but I didn't. And I'm like, and then Sophia comes running over to me, and I'm like crying, and I'm hugging Amanda, and she's whispering, you know, your food was, it was that good. It was like incredible, but I don't want to say anything more. I want to talk to you about that later. So that's exactly what we did. So it was Hollywood. You know, there's all the big cameras. They come into Bonfire. I didn't, you know, I was such tunnel vision in his kitchen. I didn't realize, because I'd never been in his kitchen before. But at Bonfire, they allowed me to stay as they set up, but then I had to be off the premises. But there's like 20 people, you know, putting up all these booms and lights and screens, and they got all these cameras and guys with backpacks and cameras chasing you around. And for some reason, I felt like there was one guy videotaping me, like on his cell phone for my thing. I don't know. Obviously, it wasn't that way. But it was incredible. Subsequently, I became pretty good friends with all those people. Ron Hanks, no relation to Tom Hanks, was a producer. And he's done some shows that I've been a part of, too, on PBS. Joseph Rosendo, Stepping Out. There's another thing that is in the mix. This past year, ChefSwap came back, and they wanted Rivertown Bistro finally. Bad news, Darren. We don't want you. You're already on TV. We want your sous chef. So here again, Terry steps in. We're going against fire and smoke. And I said, there's no way. Tyler is my contemporary. He and I are chefs. Terry is a wonderful chef, but he's not going to go against Tyler. Tyler has too many tricks up his sleeve. Well, Tyler didn't want to do it. So we pitted sous chefs against each other, and Terry won. And it was like watching my little brother, best buddy, son. I couldn't be at the competition, but I was at the award ceremony, and me and my daughter are sitting with his daughter, Quinn. And we're just talking, and Terry's up there, and we didn't know who was going to win. And they announced it was Terry, and we were all jumping up and down and crying. And his daughter runs over just like my daughter had done the previous year. And that's an experience, you know, you just can't take that away. So now we have 2 ChefSwap knives, this national show. And Ron says they're coming back next year. And I'm like, are we going to be a part of it? He's like, I can't tell you. So we'll see.
So we'll see. Well, I'm excited to stay tuned. I really appreciate you taking time to chat with me today. It's been so great just learning more about your journey of your career, and I can't wait to come back and eat at your restaurant again because it was so good.